There is a recording of a man losing control of his voice. He is standing on a field in New Jersey with a microphone and a machine that cuts sound directly into a disc, and he has been sent to do a dull job. Describe an airship arriving. He has done it before. Everyone has. The arrival of a Zeppelin is a scheduled event, like a boat train. Then something happens above him, and he stops being a reporter and becomes a man watching people die. Oh, the humanity, he says, and all the passengers screaming around here. Then he tells his listeners he cannot talk anymore, that it is just laying there, a mass of smoking wreckage, and that he is going to step inside where he cannot see it. That is the most famous disaster recording ever made. Almost everything the world believes about how it was made is wrong, and the difference is the reason an entire industry stopped existing. It is the 6th of May, 1937. The airship is coming in to the Naval Air Station at Lakehurst, and it is the largest thing ever to have flown. Here is what most people can tell you about what happened next. It caught fire because it was full of hydrogen, and hydrogen burns. It went up in seconds. There is film of it. Everyone has seen the film. All of that is true, and none of it explains anything, because the question worth asking is not why the fire started. It is why 36 deaths ended a form of travel. Start with who was on board, because the number is smaller than people expect, and it matters. 97 people, 36 passengers, 61 crew. One of them was a boy of 14 named Werner Franz, a cabin boy, whose job that afternoon was clearing away dishes. The ship was 4 times the length of a jetliner, and it moved at the speed of a fast car. It had a dining room with a promenade and windows you could open, because at that altitude and that speed, you could lean out into the air. Nobody was strapped to anything. It was the most comfortable way to cross an ocean that has ever existed, and it was about to stop existing forever. The fire began somewhere near the tail, and the argument about the next few seconds has never been settled. Some accounts say 32 seconds from the first sign of flame to the wreck on the ground. Some say 34. Some say 37. Sit with why nobody knows. There were newsreel cameras on that field, several of them, and they are the reason the event is famous. None of them was filming when it started. They were waiting for the mooring, which was the shot they had been sent for, and by the time they were rolling, the ship was already burning. So the most watched disaster of the 20th century has no footage of its own beginning, and its duration is an estimate assembled from people who were looking up. Werner Franz was in the ship's belly when the floor above him began to come apart. What saved him was water. A ballast tank burst directly over his head and soaked him through, and the soaking bought him the seconds he needed. He kicked out through a cloth supply hatch, dropped to the ground and ran, with the burning frame coming down almost on top of him. He lived until 2014. He died at 92, the last surviving member of the crew. 62 people got off that ship alive. That is the number that should stop you, because it is most of them. But surviving is not the same as being unhurt, and this is where the truth is ugly. Most of the 62 were severely burned. The captain, Max Pruss, rowed the ship down as it burned, ordered everyone out, then went back in and carried his radio operator clear of the wreckage. Then he went looking for more people, and rescuers had to physically restrain him to stop him. He was burned so badly he was given last rites. He lived another 23 years with a face that never went back to what it had been. 35 people died aboard. 1 more died on the ground. His name was Alan Hageman. He was not a passenger, and he was not a crewman. He was a local man, part of the civilian ground party, hired to stand in a field and help tie up an airship, which is the kind of work that is supposed to carry no risk at all. The rest of that ground party did not run away from the wreck. They ran at it, into the heat, and pulled people out. Some of the 62 are alive because of men whose entire job that afternoon was catching a rope. 36 people. Now do the comparison that nobody does. The Titanic killed roughly 1,500. The world's response was to build better ocean liners with more boats and better drills, and transatlantic shipping carried on for another half a century. The Hindenburg killed 36, and within a year commercial passenger airships were finished. Not curtailed. Finished. The largest aircraft ever built, on the safest looking service in the world, and the entire category was simply abandoned. And it was not looking safe by accident. The ship that opened this service, her older sister, had crossed the Atlantic 143 times, something in the region of 600 flights, more than 1 million miles, 9 years of commercial operation, and in all of it, she never injured a passenger. That was the history the industry was built on, and it was a real one. That is not a death toll doing this. Something else killed it. Before the verdict, the engineering. Because it deserves one honest passage. The ship was designed to fly on helium, a gas that cannot catch fire. It is heavier than hydrogen, and it lifts less, and it costs more, and none of that matters next to the fact that you cannot set fire to it. She flew on hydrogen instead, and the reason had nothing to do with the men who built her. The United States held around 80% of the world's helium supply, and a law Congress passed in 1925 made it illegal to export the stuff. It was written as a strategic resource measure in the way a country protects a mineral it alone possesses. Be careful here, because the popular version of this story gets it backwards. That export ban was passed 8 years before Hitler came to power. It was not aimed at the German government. It was simply a law about a gas, written a decade earlier and an ocean away, and its effect was that a ship built for a fireproof lifting gas was filled with a flammable one by people who had no say in the matter. So that is the mechanism, and it is a good one. And it still does not explain the verdict, because a mechanism explains a fire. It does not explain the end of an industry. Here is what actually killed the airship. The cameras were already there, not because anyone expected a catastrophe. The opposite. They were there because a Zeppelin docking was routine, a reliable photograph, the kind of assignment you send a junior man to. And a man with a recording machine was standing on the same field for the same dull reason, which means that for the first time in history, a disaster of this scale was captured while it happened, on film and in sound, by people who had been sent to cover something ordinary. The literature has a name for it: the first multimedia air disaster. Earlier catastrophes reached the public as text, as still photographs, as an account. This one reached them as an event. You did not read about it afterwards. You watched it happen, and you heard a man's voice come apart while it did. That man was named Herb Morrison. He was a radio announcer out of West Virginia, handed the kind of assignment that goes to whoever happens to be available. What he actually did that afternoon was stand in a field and describe people dying, and then apologize to nobody in particular for being unable to continue. Here is the part that should sit strangely with you. He did not know that anybody would ever hear it. He was not on the air. He was speaking into a machine that was cutting a disc for a piece that might be assembled later or might not be. The most quoted 60 seconds of the 20th century were made by a man with no idea whether it would be thrown away. And now, the detail that almost nobody has right. That pairing, the burning ship with the voice over the top of it, was never experienced by anybody in 1937. The recording was not a broadcast. It was cut onto a disc by an engineer standing next to him, and it did not go out over the air until the following day. It was not made for the newsreel, and it was never shown with the newsreel. The film played in theaters, silent or with a studio narrator. The voice played on the radio, a day late, on its own. The two were married together afterwards by other people, into the thing everyone now remembers. That combined artifact is what did the cultural work. It is what emptied the booking offices. So the technology was not destroyed by being unsafe. This service had flown 1,000,000 miles without a scratch on a passenger. It was not destroyed by 36 deaths. It was destroyed by being the first thing anybody could watch, and then by being edited into something even more powerful than what the witnesses saw. Every airship flying today is filled with helium. Every company building them says so in the first paragraph, unprompted, because they know exactly what they are answering. In 2025, a prototype, the length of a city block, flew over San Francisco Bay, and a larger one is being built in a hangar in Ohio. And both of them are full of a gas that cannot burn, chosen in direct reply to 30-odd seconds of film that does not even show the beginning. That is the postmortem. The ship was killed by fire. The industry was killed by an edit. One man shot the film, another cut the voice onto a disc, and a third put the two together long afterward. But the postmortem writes itself. The only question is whether anyone reads it before the next one.